pase, pierna derecha, directo al arco, ¡golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
Good day, good night, and welcome to Soccer Today for Monday, May 7th, 2018. Joining us on the line right now, live from Minnesota, Wes Burdine, to give us a little bit of a Minnesota check-in this Monday morning. Good morning, Wes.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
No problem. Coming off the 1-0 win against Vancouver on the weekend there, down to 10 men for a portion of that game as well. Obviously, it's been a decent start for United. 1.33 points per game. They're sitting there above the line right now. A lot of us picked them near the bottom. I don't believe you were one, but tell me, are you surprised? Are you happy? What are you thinking so far when you're looking at this team?
I'd say, the part that doesn't surprise me is we're doing results-wise just about what I would expect. We haven't had any big wins this season, but we're a very good team at home, like most MLS teams. I think what the positive things that have surprised me are I didn't expect the team to be to be playing as kind of attractive soccer as they are. Right now they look like they're a lot of fun, with Darwin Quintero, and Miguel Ibarra is a man on fire. And so that's the positive thing. But really, the West is just bad. There's a lot of bad teams. And so you win a game and suddenly you look like you're not bad.
Fair enough. You mentioned Ibarra, as you said, he's been playing so well this year. What has the key to his game been, and how important is it that you maintain that form if Minnesota is going to make a challenge for that playoff spot?
Well, I think it's really simple with Miguel. Miguel is very much a confidence player, and you run into that a lot with some of these guys. But he came off of a great season in Minnesota in NASL. He was on top of his game. I think still had a lot to grow. And then he went to Liga MX, had 3 different coaches, had to fight a lot more and wasn't getting, the kind of really just arm over the shoulder encouragement. And so he started to play more simply and start doing more back passes or side passes. And you could see that even when he came back to MLS, he was trying really hard to just play safe. And as he started to play better, you could see now he's shooting the ball. He's running forward, making lots of really incisive passing. And it's really, I think, just about confidence. And I don't think, unfortunately, I think Minnesota's head coach, Adrian Heath, has not done a good job of instilling confidence in a lot of these players, but it's working right now.
Now, it's been about a month now that Darwin Quintero has joined the ranks of Minnesota United FC, and we've seen against Vancouver this weekend that it's not necessarily easy. A lot of players from the opposing team like to welcome Darwin to Major League Soccer with some nice little tackles and nice little physical play. How has been the transition of Darwin Quintero to Minnesota?
Yeah, his first introduction to the game was I think trying to remember the Alvis Powell for Portland putting his studs right in Darwin's shin. Yeah, Quintero. Anytime a player comes in and plays in MLS for the first time, I'm really cautious because we've seen so many good players just not adapt well or take a long time. So my expectations for Quintero were, maybe we'll get a little bit out of him this year, but really 2019 is when you want to see him producing. And he has been, I think, very good. I think that with him as well, there's kind of a higher ceiling that we have yet to see. There's moments where you can see he's still getting to know his teammates, still getting to know everything. But Yeah, I think that he's been really fantastic, and you combine him with Miguel, and even if Christian Ramirez is not scoring goals, or you're not getting as much production elsewhere, at least Miguel and Quintero are keeping the attack pretty fluid.
You mentioned the way that Minnesota got their results this year, and it's been a bit more eye-pleasing than last year, or if we're looking at Adrian Heath as a manager, usually his teams are not necessarily the most offensively focused teams, and this is a bit of difference right now this year for Minnesota. We're talking about a 5th position in the Western Conference, and I have to agree with you and Duane when you mentioned earlier that the West is bad. Yes, you go outside of the top 6 and it's anyone's game. But now, still playing at the Gophers, University of Minnesota Stadium, waiting for Alliance Field to be done. How important is for Minnesota soccer as a whole, because I don't want to talk about the attendance and the stands. It's an amazingly huge stadium in Minnesota and doesn't give justice if it looks empty even if there's 20,000 people in there. But how important is the stadium coming for next year, and the safe standing situation section and other great benefit that this stadium will bring? Is it almost a second launch next year when this stadium will open? And is the presence of a Quintero and maybe a more eye-pleasing offense maybe a solution as well to make sure that next year you do have that stadium filled?
Yeah, well, I do think that they tried to play pretty fluid attacking soccer last year. They just didn't have the talent to do it. Which is that, they had and continue to have some pretty talented players who kind of go under the radar, but they just weren't able to pull it off to the degree that they wanted. They still had a pretty decent expansion season last year, and I think that now they can kind of get some things together, and if they could play defense, then they can allow them to be more attractive. But your point about the stadium or question there is, it's the key question. The team has been criticized for a long time for having a quote unquote soft open and spending these first 2 years kind of getting things ready, and then really 2019 is when they're going to go for it. And I think that it's just quite obvious that that's what they're doing. They don't want to express it in that way, but they know that putting together a good team takes time, to get depth and to get quality players brought in. And so I think, look, in 2019, this stadium is going to be one of the best stadiums in the league. It will be, already it's got a waiting list for season tickets. So what they need to do is just capitalize on that, because you only get 2 times to make a first impression for this team, because they made their first impression and it was the disastrous start that everyone continues to talk about. And this is their chance to wipe that clean. And they really they don't need to win the league. They just need to be good. And when you look at the West, being good gets you in 3rd place. I mean, there's really only LAFC and Sporting, and then everyone else is pretty mediocre. And so
I still don't believe in LAFC. I have to be honest with you, Wes. I still believe LAFC will realize that, oh, wait, yes, we are an expansion team, and this travel thing is difficult, but go on.
Or that you need more than 18 players. Yes, I agree. But I'm not going to say anything bad about LAFC before they put a bare bottom spanking on Minnesota this week. So, you were right. The stadium is their chance to kind of reset the message, and that they want to be, they're not a cheapskate team. They just want it to be slower. And I think the realities of what Atlanta has done have hit every team around the league. It's just a new era. So getting players in is even tougher. Minnesota tried to get this young guy, Nicholas Benedetti, and other young players, and all of a sudden these South American teams are asking for Ezequiel Barco money. And you've got a reality that you couldn't just get one or two GAM-TAM players. Now everyone needs as many GAM-TAM players, and they need several DPs, and it's amazing how much has changed since 2 years ago.
Can you imagine how much has changed since 11 years ago when TFC first launched in? Yeah. I mean, that team wouldn't even be competitive in the USL. Well, they were barely competitive then. But at any rate, I digress. Let's continue with the stadium. Some of our listeners, we've had conversations about it in the past. Obviously, right now, for those that don't know, they're playing in a college football stadium, which is 50,000 seats. They're going into a 20,000 seater. It's just a shade below 20,000. Tell us a little bit more. Remind us a little bit more what that stadium is going to feature, what it's going to look like, sort of where it is. Give us a little bit of and sort of summarize where it is in the building process right now.
Yeah, so it is 50% done. It's called Allianz Field. Some of us like to call it Cloud City. It's basically there is on the south end what's going to be called the Wonder Wall, which is where little less than 3,000 fans will stand in the kind of it'll be the highest rake, highest angle of any supporter section, I think, in Western Hemisphere, at least in the country. And that, it'll have a roof over top of that part and most of the stands. So it'll basically just keep all the sound in and act as a microphone for it. And then the rest of the stadium is going to be, very beautiful. It'll be very much like Sporting Kansas City, where you go to the furthest back seat and you're still right on top of the game. And so it's going to be a big part of getting fans excited for years to come. There's only so far a beautiful environment can take you. You have to have a good team there, but it's right in the middle of the Twin Cities, right on this kind of transit hub of the train and buses, and the highway, and so it's kind of perfect. And for longtime Minnesota fans like me, MLS was a nice jump, but for us, it's been far more about a stadium, because we've seen soccer almost die for a couple decades every year, and having something permanent that is kind of a spiritual home is far more important than whatever league we're playing in.
Fair enough. Let's mention the crowd support. It wasn't a bad crowd. I mean, we can probably around what it would be a sellout in the other place. I'm just curious. You mentioned the soft launch and things like that. Where this team is standing in the market right now. You kind of have it by yourself right now. Obviously, the Twins are playing. But your winter teams are done. Twins aren't doing so great off the start of the year. I actually reverse jinxed them last year. I could remember criticizing them with you, and then they ended up having a decent season. So if you're a Twins fan, maybe you'll enjoy that I'm hating on them right now. But yeah, just where are the Loons standing in the marketplace in terms of their visibility and sort of how they're covered and things like that right now?
Yeah, I mean, they were averaging 21,000 last year, and they'll probably average. They'll do more than that this year. And there's 20,000 people in the stadium the other day. I think that all of that is good. It's a good sign. There's a decent atmosphere in a pretty bad stadium. It's just a bad place to watch soccer. It's set up east to west. It's it's got nothing covering the stands, and so it feels quieter than it is if you're in the section. But in terms of like market, how Minnesota have done in terms of getting out in the market, there's a long way to go to becoming far more just not just mainstream, but far more in the zeitgeist of whether that's weekly, cable news or network news, or whether it's in the kind of hip areas of the alternative newspaper and things like that. They don't do a great job of marketing the team, but what they have is kind of some of the best supporters in the country, I think, which kind of create they do a lot of this kind of work of getting people in and creating an environment and constantly creating events around the cities, and that kind of stuff, like the Wonder Wall, for example, that and having scarves waving scarves at corner kicks. Like, those are the two biggest marketing things that the team has done, and those are dark clouds created. And so I think that the team has a long way to go to kind of get fully out into the marketplace, but I'm not particularly worried about it. I would love to see more, but it's just, yeah.
When we're looking at the next game from Minnesota, you mentioned they're facing LAFC in the weekend, and I'm wondering, Wes, you've watched a bit of LAFC since the beginning of the season, and maybe this weekend was one of the first the goal scored against them on Cima. And I have to say, I've been impressed by Cima a few times this season. As a former Montreal player, I've always watched Laurent Cima play more often. But then he back to normal, and he was able difficulty to defend. So I'm wondering, do you think Minnesota has a shot of not humbling necessarily LAFC, but bring him back down a bit, like take him off of heaven, let go of the angels, and bring him back down to earth a little bit? Maybe Minnesota has what it takes to trouble them, because defensively, they're not as reliable as their record indicates.
Well, here's the problem, though. Minnesota are going to be playing without a striker. They have three strikers. Christian Ramirez and Abu Denladi are both injured. And then they've got Mason Toy, who's a rookie who decided that his elbow should go into Kendall Waston's stomach and got a red card. So they will be playing a weird formation with probably Darwin Quintero, who is a striker, just a different model. They'll be playing with him probably leading the line. And they don't have much depth right now. They have a lot of injuries. They'll probably have this young Cameroonian guy named Franz Pangop playing, and we've only seen 10 minutes of him. So it's gonna be a little worrying. Minnesota certainly could do something, but the Minnesota defense is it's just frankly bad, and the idea of Carlos Vela running at that defense gives me kind of nightmares. So I think what they'll do is they've got LAFC away on Wednesday, and I think their goal should just be get out alive. And then they've got San Jose on the weekend at home, and then that should be the game. You're going to lose against LA. Maybe you can just buckle up and get a draw, but it's going to be San Jose at home is where they want to get the points.
And usually when you're playing San Jose at home, doesn't matter which team you are, doesn't matter which city, it's a chance at victory. Usually San Jose is a team that doesn't travel well, and is a team that has been not necessarily a shell of themselves, basically, for the last few years. The Goonies are long gone. Goonies.
Well, they beat us here last year, so I'll let you say that. No, I won't jinx it.
All right, I'll let you not jinxing it. To wrap up the interview, Wes, I'm going to give you the floor if you want to promote anything that you would like. And I have to say, if you are a Minnesota fan in Minnesota or around the United States or Canada and you're listening to this, there's a great book that's from FiftyFive.One, where Wes is from, and talking about year one, talking about dark clouds. It's called Dark Clouds, and I suggest you give it a read.
Yeah, we've got The Complete Darkness is kind of a book that we do every year, and it kind of recaps the the season, and so people can certainly check that out. We did the Complete Darkness 2017 that we put out this last January. But no, I'm really glad to talk Minnesota with you guys anytime. You guys do a great job up there, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Wes, for your time today. We'll be right back after the break with our Canadian review.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network. You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.
And we're back on Soccer Today. Before we talk about the Canadian review and games in the Canadian MLS teams, Duane, Canadian Premier League has had a great weekend. On Saturday, the Canadian Premier League announced 4 new ownership group 4. Yes, 4. Like the 4 horsemen. You're seeing my 4 right now. 4 ownership group. And guess what? Foothills, Calgary Foothills are one of those ownership group. It is open. It is okay now to say it. Congratulations to Tommy Wilden Jr. and everyone at Foothills Soccer. Calgary, Hamilton. Hamilton's already been too many H's, Duane. I'm not used to H's. Halifax. It's going to be Sports Entertainment Atlantic, having the team Derek Martin and company in Halifax. You have as well on top of it Surrey, which Port City FC, and York 9. Those 4 ownership group. York 9 is Carlo Baldessera, like we mentioned in a few weeks ago in our special 2S Solitude show. So, Duane, Canadian Premier League, 6 teams confirmed and possibly 2 more in the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, and the 2 more, I think, are trying to work out the transfer to from USL and from not existing at the moment to FC Edmonton. Yeah, so if you bring those 2 over, that's the 8 that we've said. And we've always heard 8 to 10 is the number that they will launch with. That's, KW is not quite ready yet. The Saskatchewan team, not quite ready yet. You can probably look at those 2 as your next 2 in after those. But if you want to hear more detailed conversation, including a great interview this week, you have to give us a little bit of money. Our Patreon's only Two Solitudes podcast, which focuses primarily on the Canadian Premier League, available for Patreons of $2 or more a month. Kevin, that's all I got to say on that. But also some stadium news out of Calgary that we'll talk about. It's going to be a big show this week on Two Solitudes, and just $2.
Yep,
$2 a month.
We have a few scheduled interview with owners of the teams in the Canadian Premier League. So stay tuned to the Two Solitude Soccer podcast over the next few weeks. We're already scheduled towards the end of May, and we got interviews lined up. Going to be great shows for the next few weeks. You'll discover Halifax, you'll discover Calgary, and you'll discover other places of the Canadian Premier League. From a fan perspective, yes, we'll talk to supporters groups, but from an ownership perspective and behind-the-scene perspective, too. So that will be interesting. Speaking of perspective, finally, you got to win, Duane. Major League Soccer, Toronto FC, 3-0 win at home against... who are they playing against? Wasn't it...
Philadelphia Union.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's forgettable.
Yeah, it's their second win of the year. Some people keep forgetting they beat RSL earlier in the year too. So 7 points on the season now. Yeah, they needed it, and more to the point, it was a complete performance. Now Philadelphia's pretty bad, especially on the road. There was a Philadelphia tweet. I don't remember offhand who it was, but one of the Philadelphia writers went back and traced their last 10 road wins, the Union, and one of the teams listed on that last 10 road wins was Chivas USA. So that tells you a little bit about how their road form has been.
Could have been worse. Could have been the mutiny. So I was expecting like the mutiny or something, but no. And 3-0. You said a complete performance, and it was a complete performance by Giovinco as well, which people were a bit worried with how Giovinco looked in the CONCACAF Champions League final. Of course, he had those great goals and those free kicks and opportunities, but on the run of play, it wasn't as expected to the level as we anticipate from a Giovinco Friday night at BMO Field. It was.
No, precisely. And I haven't made my vote yet, but I am highly leaning towards Giovinco getting my Player of the Week vote this week just because of the performance was all around. I had something like 10 shots on goal during the game. Philadelphia as a team had 5. So, it was an overall performance that really deserved a lot of credit. And that goal from the run of play where he beat the man on the dribble, managed to maintain his balance and get the tough angle shot off through, and Andre Blake is a good keeper too. So just scoring him, no small feat there. And it was a nice goal. I mean, he didn't get the requisite brace to win Player of the Week. So I don't have any hope that he will, but I think I might give him my vote.
Well, yeah, there's a certain Nacho Piatti. I don't know if you heard of him before, who had a great weekend. Same for Anthony Jackson-Hamel, but we'll see. I have to agree with you, but it's great to have Toronto back on the winning side, and now with the CONCACAF Champions League done, and with the Canadian Championship a few months away, you only have one battlefront to focus on, and that's going to be really helpful for a injury and form-plagued Toronto FC.
No, and they have and also beat up and confusing Seattle team on the horizon. Rematch of the MLS Cup Finals coming up on Wednesday night. I don't think it's likely that we're going to get 3 in a row based on both Toronto's hole that they're in now, the possibility of them hosting a third straight MLS Cup. I'd start saving your pennies up, TFC fans, if you have hopes to go to the MLS final, because I think it might be on the road this time.
Yep.
But yeah, it doesn't seem likely, and certainly that both of them would turn it around seems even more unlikely. Look, yeah, you're right. The math is still there for them if they play at the rate that they played last year. So something that they're capable at. I'm not saying win out or something crazy like that. They can drop some points here and there. But if they play at the same pace they did last year, currently based on the points that they have right now and the amount of games that they still have left, and keep in mind that they do have 2 games in hand on most teams in the league right now, they would finish with 60 points. So that is 9 points off last year. To get up to 69 again would be an outrageous finish to the season. So that's probably off the table. And, Supporters Shield probably is going to be around 63, 64, 65. So that's probably off the table too. But every point they get the rest of the way is going to be vital for that reason that I just spoke of. It's going to speak to getting, home advantage in the playoffs. And Toronto has proven over the last couple of years that BMO in the playoffs can be a pretty intimidating place to go into, unless it goes to penalty kicks, and then all bets are off. It's
and you got good players in the playoff makes a difference. Your best players are your best assets in the playoffs, and Javinko will be Javinko. So there's always a chance. There's always a shot. It's like Montreal. You don't want to play against a Piatti and against a potential new DP coming this summer, or someone hot like an Anthony Jackson in the playoff in a one-off. You never want to do that.
No, and that's TFC's goal right now. They are 13 points back of NYCFC for second in the conference. That's a big deficit. Now they do play them twice yet, so you can consider that. Reining that in would be, I think, the realistic but difficult goal that they would have to get back up to second. Sort of say Atlanta or New York's going to get hot, probably win the Shield, or Kansas City will continue to play well and win the Shield or something on the other side. The Shield doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't. It was a very nice prize last year, and it mattered a lot, I think, to TFC to prove something last year that they could win the Shield. But until it's a balanced schedule, I wouldn't put much stock in it really as a trophy. That's right? True. Like it doesn't make a lot of sense when you're not playing the same teams equally. It's not really representative of much.
And you don't have that ticket when you win the Shield in Canada for the CONCACAF Champions League, anyways. So
the
it's
only
all those
thing it
things
does
combined.
really is give you the home advantage throughout the playoffs. You're going to host the MLS Cup.
And a shiny plate to have some nachos on. Like, they'll be the most expensive and nice platter to serve like your appetizers. That's a good idea.
Have you ever held the thing?
No, but I've seen it. I never touched it because can't touch it until I win it, and I haven't won it. Let's move on to Montreal. This game of Toronto was Friday night. Now moving on to Saturday morning. I don't know what's with MLS and their schedule. It seems like they want to get the Canadian games out of the way.
They're out of the way.
For Friday, Saturday morning, boom, 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 done. All right, let's move on to Americans. But, wow, what a game at Stade Saputo, Duane. 2 goals for Anthony Jackson, the Limoilou bomber, plus Nacho Piatti, a goal and 3 assists. A goal by Raheem Edwards. A great performance by Montreal. Who cares about the 2 goals conceded late? It was 4-0. It was a party. It was sunny. It was Nacho Piatti's show. 1 goal, 3 assists for the Nacho man, my player of the week. Of course, but what was fun to see, Duane, is Anthony Jackson. When he starts, he scores.
Exactly. Well, he had a fire lit on him this week.
Yes.
The manager wasn't exactly. This is a good thing, I think, from a man management standpoint. He, called him out a little bit, and then it gave him a chance to prove himself, right? And he did. So that's a valuable thing.
It's genius. I think Miguel is a genius. Because if you actually followed the whole story since last Tuesday, it wasn't a coming out of Rémi Garde to call out the players like to begin with. It was just Rémi Garde answering question of journalists, and journalists steering him in a direction, and him answering, taking time, and answering questions in a very posed fashion. The words, if you read the words that were said on Tuesday, they might be aggressive just reading the word, but the tone was really posed, and it was just a discussion. And he called him out, not necessarily calling him out saying, I'm expecting more, blah, 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 rah, rah, rah. It was more, look, they know. I had the conversation with them. We are expecting more from them. We are expecting a better relationship at work. We're expecting them to have more intensity in training. Those little details that he mentioned last Tuesday, he mentioned to the team for a long time. But, there's one thing to say, look, I'm telling you the team something, react. Well, I'm going to tell your family and the fans and everyone else that watches those games what I told you guys, so you guys cannot hide anymore. And now when you walk down the street, the fans are going to look at you, hey, work harder. I'm not saying that you're not working harder. It's just exposing those conversations to the open, and it's challenging a bit the response. Never was it done in a alienating fashion. It was really done in a clever way of, for me in my mind, Rémi Garde seeing an opportunity, answering a question, and using this and the way the journalists took it and the way the people were rolled with it during the week, and just using it and be like, okay, I created an opportunity for them now. Why not make him start? I told him I wanted more from them, but now I'm going to make him start for the first time in a long time. Jackson, Edwards, and guess what? They showed up.
Yeah, and not just to quickly nod back to Toronto, 4 goals by Canadians in the first 2 games of MLS this week. The Jay Chapman goal was a nice thing to see too in the end of the TFC game, and set up by Jordan Hamilton, who's really made the play. A beautiful pass by Hamilton too. At any rate, nice performance by the Canadian kids over the weekend. We'd like to see that. I had hoped to get it out on Friday, but I had some internet issues over the weekend. But Sober Second Thoughts will be out later today, and you can hear Greg Vandy talk about that nice goal at the end of the game by the 2 Canadian kids, if you're a Canadian fan. And this is a Canadian Review, so yep. I guess we should point that out. But a much-needed win by Montreal, more to the point. They, had they not got that performance, I think you really could have sort of started to wallow a little bit into the, the disappointment of the way that they allowed all those goals in Atlanta. You could have really just sort of had it start to pile on, but they got the win and they can move forward from that. Yep. And look, it's not like any team in the East is buried yet either, right? So you make some changes in the summer, and you sort of address some of that defensive shortcomings that you're having, whatever that means, whether that means improving the midfield or improving the actual center defense or just getting healthy, whatever that means.
Well, we saw a big difference there. Yeah, we saw a big difference too with the play of Samuel Piette and Safir Taider. I have to say, Duane, Rémi Garde is really has high expectations for Samuel Piette. He's expecting more of Samuel Piette than any other player in this team. Samuel Piette was maybe, arguably, outside of Piatti, the best Montreal Impact player on Saturday. The amount of interception he was doing in the midfield, when you have a team like New England who's trying to press high in the midfield and trying to get the ball carrier to make a mistake and lose it so they can effectively create a turnover and create a chance there. When you have a team that wants to do this, the way you keep your composure, the way you intercept passing lanes, and the way you try to get balls and create chances from your side, we've seen Piette be very efficient there. And we've seen a Samuel Piette create 2 goal-scoring occasions that turned out to be goals because of interception in the midfield. So Samuel Piette, as much as he's playing amazingly, the coach still wants more out of him. And that reassures me, Duane. That makes me happy because you expect more out of a player that has great potential. You expect more out of the player that can be the best midfielder in this damn league. And the ceiling for Samuel Piette, the way he was brought up, the way he was coached, the way he was managed, the way he trains, the way he's serious about his play, Samuel Piette can be one of the best Canadian soccer player we've ever created, especially in the midfield. And that's why Rémi Garde has this amount of expectations and pressure on him, and he is always expecting more because he knows he can deliver. And we saw that on Saturday. It wasn't perfect. There was a few balls here and there that Samuel Piette and especially Rémi Garde would like to have back. But Samuel Piette, one of the best, in my opinion, defensive midfielder in MLS.
Samuel Piette has been an enigma for a long time. I think we forget how young he still is too, though, because he's 25? Been around on the national team level since he was 17.
He's 25, 24, 25 or something.
23. He's
23.
November 12th. He's born November 12th, 1994, day after my birthday.
I'm 10 years older. I'm 10 years older than Sam, man. That's crazy.
Yeah, so he's 94. Like you said, he broke into the national team 17. He has the raw talent, right? You don't, even in Canada, and jokes aside, you don't get a national team performance when you're 17 unless you have the talent. He's been in Spain. He's been all over the place. He's never really had that opportunity to truly stand out. Montreal has provided him with that, the hometown situation, and I'm glad that he went on the little trip first, that he played outside that, because that's something I think that sometimes some of our Canadian kids, it hurts them when they never get out of the small pond, right? And he got out of the small pond and he was challenged and he failed a little bit too. And nothing wrong with failure sometimes as long as you drive forward. And certainly a lot of potential there. And there's not enough of them, but when you want to take this to a national team level, there is some interesting young prospects, well, I wouldn't call Piat a prospect anymore. As I said, he's been around for a long time now, but
he'll be the captain. He'll be the captain and the core of the Canadian men's national team starting next year. Same for the Impact. He's going to be the captain of the Montreal Impact. There's no even questions about it. Piatti gave him the armband when he was subbed off, but 2019, one of the first news that's going to happen in January is Samuel Piat, club captain.
It's there's a little bit of depth there too. Now you look, Piat and Marc-Anthony Kay sort of playing the same kind of role for their club. So there's a little bit of young depth in the midfield for them. And you look at guys like Junior Hallett has finally come on. Arfield's got another cycle. I mean, I'm starting to get excited by the Canadian national team, and that's a terrifying thing. So I should stop talking now.
It's hopes that gets you at the end, Duane. It's the hope that gets to you. And I'm
a Raptors fan. Trust me.
Oh, yeah, it's true. I should have said Duane from Lebronto. But that's another question. Here, you mentioned Junior Hallett. Congratulations to Cardiff City. Yesterday, the club of Vincent Tan was promoted to the Premier League. So we'll have Junior Hallett maybe in the Premier League next year, but we won't have Scott Arfield. Because Scott Arfield, well, he might be in the Premier League. We know he won't be playing with Burnley.
In our Premier League. Yeah, he's
a Premier League team. But maybe he'll be in MLS. Who knows?
Maybe he'll be in the Canadian Premier League. No,
he's looking good.
He's likely going to sign for Rangers, which I don't know. You can judge your own thing there. He'll probably get paid well there. That would be likely what's attracting him to say what you want about Rangers. They still do pay their players fairly well.
Yeah, and they have Steven Gerrard as their manager. But let's continue with the Canadian review. Unless you have anything else to say about Montreal.
No, the Impact got a big win on the weekend. Exactly. They're 5 points out of the playoff spot right now, so
which is not bad. And they're playing Chicago. That's what I was talking about a few weeks ago. I was mentioning the game of LAFC and the 4 games after, which are potential to win and to lose. And the 2 games that Montreal really needed to win was against New England at home last Saturday, and next Saturday at home against Philly. Those 2 games are instrumental because you're playing against teams that are going to be battling with you in the playoff race, or teams that are in the bottom, like Philly. So those 2 victories are because of Saturday. It was really important and will be important next Saturday. But Wednesday, Chicago, Montreal is having a road game, and it's almost a game where you don't want to necessarily risk too much. Make a lot of changes. Don't hurt Piatti. Make Kroliki play 90 minutes because he didn't play Saturday. It's a bonus game. But if Montreal just wins the 2 home in the last 5, they're still going to be in the battle for the playoffs with the teams around them. It's going to be New England. It's going to be Chicago. And it's going to be those type of teams. And if you win against those in your conference, at least those teams don't gather points at the same time as you lose some. And you just keep yourself afloat.
Yeah, 5 games midweek. We'll preview them on Wednesday, obviously, a little bit. But it's going to be a very heavy week this week in terms of the midweek games. Kind of this is the first stretch of midweek games that we're seeing this year. And then while the season, as the weather starts to get a little bit nicer, I think that they're trying to get a little more games in. At any rate,
Vancouver.
Yeah, good for the.
Yep.
Sorry,
I was going to say Vancouver lost on the road to a 10-man Minnesota. Yep, Minnesota's got to win on their at home, and Vancouver lost a man and lost a game.
Yeah, and look, Robbo out. I did a little poll after I just said Robbo out question mark, and keep in mind that my feed is probably a little bit biased because probably a lot of the votes were Toronto FC fans just taking the piss, but nonetheless, it was a 75% voting that it was time for a change in the managerial position, and this is, I think, going to continue to be a story for a while, whether or not Vancouver, because their fans it's not that they're bad, and this is the problem with the Whitecaps, and we've said this many, many times. It's not that they're bad, it's that they're just meh. And that meh is hard, especially when you're looking at, Montreal's been up and down, but they've had ups, right? They've had like high ups. They were half a game away. They were one bounce the right way and start in extra time to going to MLS Cup final 2 years ago, right?
And went to the CONCACAF Champions League final and had players like Marco Di Vaio and Didier Drogba, and is one of the top 10 team in spending in Major League Soccer year in, year out, and right now like the 6th team in the roster for the amount of money spent on the roster. So no, you do have a few highlights or accomplishment that you can look at. But when you're looking at Vancouver, you don't have that spending of money. You don't have those stars that you've seen, and you don't have those results. You do have like regular results. You have regular season. Last year, 2 years ago, they had a great season, and you never know. But yeah, that's
think about it for a Whitecaps fan. There are the 4 teams that they hate the most are the Impact, TFC, Seattle, and Portland. Portland's won an MLS Cup. Seattle's won an MLS Cup. TFC's won an MLS Cup. The Impact are the only team that have not won a championship. But
they got close.
They've gone to a CCL final, and they've almost made it to an MLS Cup.
Yeah, and had players like Didier Drogba who put Montreal on the map internationally, at least on the soccer world. Yeah, so
it's been a frustrating sort of, their rivals are all winning and doing things that are exciting, and they're not doing anything. They're not doing, and you also out there, Seattle and Portland both have successful women's teams. They've dropped the women's program on the Whitecap side, right? Other than they have their X program out there. So it goes multiple levels down. They got rid of their 2 team. It seems like they're treading water or going backwards in many ways. And I think their fans are just, their hardcore fans anyway, are losing a little bit of patience with this. They feel that maybe it's time to demand a little bit more out of this club, because as much as, again, they're not bad. They're just not great. And their strategy pretty clearly is to do that. That's just be good enough to make the playoffs each year. And we'll assume that one of those years we'll get a little bit of a roll going and we'll win an MLS Cup, and we can ride that for a bit longer. And that is a strategy that has worked in MLS history. You look at the Colorado Rapids won an MLS Cup from, the last playoff spot. Portland, I mentioned a minute ago, really their MLS Cup came on a bit of a hot run. Even Seattle's MLS Cup came from a hot run, although you continue they sustained it for long enough that I don't think we can necessarily look at it as just that hot run. That's the strategy that's worked. But then again, you look at Atlanta coming in and spending the money. LAFC, they're not deep enough yet, but they're going to continue to spend the money and get better. TFC, the way that they built it through investment. And a lot of Whitecaps fans will dismiss investment and say, oh, you bought the championship, to which I've always said, well, yeah, that's how you win a championship. You buy them. Throughout the history of the sport, that's how it's done.
That's how sports work. You have money, you sign players, you win games. It's that easy. But and here, to be devil's advocate, if you're a Vancouver Whitecaps fan and you disagree with what we do, let us know what we say. Let us know right now. Subscribe to our YouTube page first, then you send us a message, and we'll happily read it on air. Subscribe on iTunes as well, and anywhere you get your podcasts, Sports Podcasting Network. But that's what I'm wondering, and this is for Matt Drummer. You know who you are, 5440 in Vancouver. What do you think of the situation? You're a Vancouver fan. What do you think? Is it enough? Is it good enough? Is getting by okay? Is not having the ambition to win okay? Or what is it? Is it okay? If it is, fine. We'll say it here too. But from an outside perspective, we're seeing a plateau that's been there for a few years. And when you're plateauing, either when you're in a weight loss or training or getting better at something, when you plateau, you got to mix it up to continue the gains. And I think it's time to mix it up.
Yeah, well, and just to take this specifically back to this week, so we really touched on the game. Minnesota got a decent goal, and then they held on. They were down a man, and Vancouver poured it forward. Kai Kamara had a shot that he should have scored on. There was an absolute sitter that he missed. And speaking of sitters, Mark Anthony Kaye made me cry a little bit watching that one. I wanted him to score so badly. But anyway,
Canadian. There's something about Canadian and sitters, either when you're playing an MLS for an MLS team or wearing Canada's shirt. It's the Laren curse. You missed them.
There you go. However, but to go back to Kamara, Kamara had that miss. Other than that, they weren't producing a lot at the end. There was, there was another great. Breck Shea had a shot from just the top of the 18 that was one of the best saves I've ever seen that came out of it. So Vancouver had some chances, but I think this speaks to what we're talking about here. They don't have a game breaker. Like Kyle Kamara is a decent player. He's a good secondary option. You have if Kyle Kamara is your second best player in your team, is your second focal point, you're probably a pretty good team. If it's your first focal point, you're probably a meh team. And that's exactly what the Whitecaps are right now.
Are you saying that like Kai Kamara, when he's next or behind Federico Higuain as a depth chart, it's really, really working. But when he's his own man, like he was in New England, like he is in Vancouver, you kind of don't have the same output of performances.
No, exactly, because he's a bit of a poacher and he's a bit of a streaky scorer, and if you're relying on him, and I understand Robinson's style and how he wants to play and how the Whitecaps can be successful. I understand how Kamara fits that style. Even I understand how Shea fits that style. Players that kind of have struggled elsewhere that are, Shea especially, I think, has found a home again, has found a second life with the Whitecaps. But they're just not guys that you want to be your focal points, I don't believe, in any real way. And they need a game breaker. And Wes spoke of it in the interview that we had, how MLS is changing. Now that Atlanta's spending money down in South America, it's not like a place that I think you can just go in and just find bargains anymore, because these teams are savvy. They're going to go, well, they paid that much, so we want that much. MLS, when you're trying to find value for signings, it's a constant evolution. You can't continually go back to the same well, because first off, the well runs dry. Second off, the well starts to get wise to what you're doing and asks for more well water. Right?
The well's more expensive. Like, what? Have to pay now? I used to just take my water for free.
So you got to kind of look, and the Whitecaps have been consistently going back to the same well when it comes to signing for a long time. They have a limited amount of people that they've worked with. There's even whispers in Vancouver that they work with the same agents too much. We'll just leave it at that. So there's a lot there that you kind of can break down and sort of wonder about a little bit. So yeah, I am trying to get a Vancouver guest for this week, and hopefully we can. So we might explore this a bit more, because I think that it is, as I said, the Whitecaps are a fascinating team. In some ways, they're the most interesting team right now in Canada, simply because they are so uninteresting. Does that make any sense?
It kind of does, I guess. We'll see.
Okay, they're interesting in their uninterestingness.
They're interesting. They're as interesting as a fire or accident is interesting to watch, I think. But
there you go.
We'll see. Thanks for listening to The Soccer Today. I guess it's new. Your most favorite soccer podcast. One of the most listened to North American soccer podcasts, that's for sure. You can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. We'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time with our medals of the weekend, taking a look at the weekend outside of Canadian team in Major League Soccer. We'll talk about Sir Alex Ferguson tomorrow too. We wish him a speedy recovery. He's in the hospital right now after a brain surgery yesterday to deal with a brain hemorrhage. So we'll keep an eye on this. We'll keep an eye as well on the big week of MLS games on Wednesday, and all that and more tomorrow on Soccer Today, 10 a.m. Eastern, live on YouTube at youtube.com/sports podcast network. Duane, you can follow Duane on Twitter at 24th Minute and myself at Kev Laramee. The show is at Soccer Today SPN. And you like what we do? You like to support us, encourage us, and get a bonus Canadian soccer only podcast? Patreon.com. That's patreon.com/sports podcasting network. Your support is very appreciated. And as always, until tomorrow, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.